today's topic. Expelo, we are talking about letter of demands. And letter of demands is such a vital document, even in the Expelo atmosphere, is because that's how we are prompted to start our amazing breach management service. So what we keep in mind is, and up to now that we say, send us the letter of demand and it's actioned. We get a lot of letter of demands. I can promise you throughout South Africa, we see different types of letter of demands, and we see they are being sent on different times. And what we really wanted to do is we wanted to share some practical things that we see from our side. So today we are not going to talk about, but this attorney likes to write it this way, this attorney writes that way. No two attorneys write the same. Okay, so it's not about the grammar, it's about the intention and the problems that we are seeing. And sometimes the mistakes that happens that can be prevented. So if we go on to the letter of demand, the most important thing that we have to remember is that in our letter of demands, it is linked to your lease agreement. Your lease agreement is super vital. And this is usually when you realize that your lease agreement was not properly completed. Now, if you look at your lease agreement, it says that if either party does something that is not in line with the lease agreement, then one should send out a letter of demand to correct it. So I think the reason why this is so super important is the purpose of the letter of demand is not just to threaten someone or to harm a relation or to be ugly or to be unfair. We hear these funny things if people get letter of demands. It is a vital step into the correct direction. So it says if somebody is doing something that is not in line with the lease agreement, you have to action a letter and demand that they fix it. So that's the start of the process. And I want us to look at that, to say, how do we start the process? If you didn't make the payment on the due date, I need to action this letter. It's not because I'm trying to threaten you or to prejudice you. That is what is required. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I think this is so important, is it stipulates to whom the letter of demand must be sent. Now, this is something that I think often I mention, and I'm going to please explain this from a practical view, what we are seeing in the industry. So the first thing is, if you have more than one tenant, each of them should receive the letter of demand. If you only send a demand of one to one of the tenants instead of two, then you can only cancel the lease agreement for one of the tenants and the other tenant can remain in the property. Now, I know sometimes what happens is you have two tenants, but they both elect one email address. So what you then do is you go, dear tenant A and tenant B, and you use the one email address. But you need to address your letter to both of them. If your system generates a letter of demand per tenant, please make sure it is emailed to both of the tenants and both those letter of demands are forwarded to Expelo, because that is vital. Remember, the moment we receive the letter of demand, Expelo, this is one of the benefits of having Expelo on your team, is we look at the letter of demand and we go, has it been sent to all of the tenants? And we have a whole checklist, which we are touching on now. So that is why it's so important for us to get it on time and that you send it to all the tenants. I also want to mention something now, which I think is quite important. If you have instances, and I see this often happening, and I'm not just talking about the instance where the parent signs a lease agreement for their child, the student or somebody, but more than often what is happening is you have a person that wants a property, they can afford the property, but because their credit score doesn't look so nice, they get somebody else to sign the lease agreement on their behalf. Now, I think, to be honest, if you know this occupant is going to stay in the property, you should add them as a tenant to the lease agreement. Because in terms of the lease agreement, the person that you are talking to is the tenant. Now, if the tenant is not staying in the property, you want the occupant to know if the payment hasn't been made, because the person who you will be evicting is the occupant. So often in those instances, if somebody is getting a property but somebody else is helping them to pay it or any to that effect, please go and send that, add them as a tenant to the lease agreement, because then you know the occupant, well, the main occupant, the person who's paying and actually know what's going on, is part of the correspondence. The other thing is, especially with body corporate rules and those type of things, you want the occupants to know these things, and you want them to have a copy, because if somebody is going to contravene the body corporate rules, it's going to be the occupants. So for this reason, I usually suggest to add the occupant. So if you want to, if you speak to your landlord, you can always say to your landlord, this is your main tenant. Look, the credit score is there, affordability is great and everything. This person will be staying in the property. For him to get all the correspondence and to make sure he knows the body corporate rules and we can have a bit more of pressure on him, let's add him then as a tenant. And he must get all of the letters as well. That is very, very important. The next thing is also, of course, is it stipulates how the demand must be sent on your lease agreement. Now, majority of your lease agreements out there, it makes provision for an email. Please make sure you actually insert the email address in the lease agreement. Because if you have not inserted in the lease agreement, then you can't use that email address for court purposes. Now, let's quickly think, what is the impact if you don't have an email address in your lease agreement? It means you are going to either post the documents, and it's not just the letter of demand, it's all your correspondence, even your invoices and everything. It means you're going to post it every month. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no faith in our local post offices that they will send the letter or that they will get it on time. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it either means that you have a messenger in your office and you're going to go and deliver all of the documents. Because remember, your lease agreement stipulates the preferred method of corresponding. I have never heard about an agency going, oh, we've got so much time and we employed somebody else just to go and deliver invoices. No, that we want to be active. So please make sure there is an email address, provision for an email address, and the email address is actually inserted. I want to mention it here that if your agency has a lease agreement and it does not make provision for a lease agreement for an email address, we are going to expect your office to go and deliver that letter of demand, because that is clearly part of your business offering to deliver documents per hand. So please do not send a letter of demand and expect us to go and deliver it. And just to mention, if you hand deliver a letter of demand, that person who's going to deliver it, they must please make a note as to what time, what date they deliver it. Did they attach it? Did they give it to someone? Who did they give it to? Because that person needs to do an affidavit to confirm this information. And I usually say, even though it might sound a bit funny, do a little selfie just to show that you were at the property. To prevent all of this time-consuming things, just put in the email address. I know the reason sometimes people also don't put in the email address. Agent said to me, yeah, but it is, but then the owner can contact the tenant directly, and then I'm going to lose my management. I'm an investor, and I've spoken to a lot of investors. I'm going to give you guys a little tip. If your landlord is happy with your services, if they trust you and they believe that you will act on their behalf, they will not bypass you, irrespective about the funds. So you need to continuously show your value, whether it's by mailing newsletters that you send out, your check-ins, giving them feedback on time. Then that won't happen. They will sign the lease agreement. They most probably won't even remember where they saved it. And they will just wait for your communications because the trust is in you. It's when they realize you are not giving feedback from the tenant, you are not doing what you are supposed to do, that they will maybe consider bypassing you. But I mean, then that's the mandate, and we can look at the mandate at a later stage. So that is important. Then, of course, the last part, the time that is granted to remedy the breach. Now, I just want to say this clause is important, and usually it's override by the CPA, because remember, if your lease agreement only makes provision for 7 days, and it's a Consumer Protection Act lease agreement, you have to give 20 business days before you can cancel. So I know most of your lease agreements is standard to say, if the CPA is applicable, you have to give 20 business days. If the CPA is not applicable, you can only give 7 days. That is fine, but it is in the lease agreement. Don't put in things like 7 days, and then what happens is your landlord says, yeah, but the lease agreement says 7 days, but now you have to give 20 days. And why is this misleading? Or you can never contract out of the lease agreement. So that is very, very important. I see there's a question. Let's read it. It is mandatory to hand deliver the letter of demand, or if I use the TPN lease agreement, it states an email is acceptable. Madeleine, you know what is amazing? Our course has really come a far, far way. And I have to say, we have done evictions all over South Africa. The courts are happy with the letter of demand that has been emailed. They need the letter of demand and proof that it was emailed to the correct email address. So that is more than sufficient. The courts also know that our post services are questionable, I would rather say. So yes, the court accepts email. I think the new trend that we are almost touching on is whether letter of demands via WhatsApp is acceptable. And if I'm looking at the trends, and please don't go send all the letter of demands by WhatsApp now. I'll give a lot of people heart attacks because most lease agreements doesn't even make provision for WhatsApp. But I think the courts usually are a bit slow, but they do see what is the trends. And remember, it is important that your tenant actually gets the correspondence, because you want them to pay. You want them to solve the problem or to contact you. It's not like you send them a letter and you hope that they don't respond or they don't get it. So that is something that is super, super important. So what is the common mistakes do we often see? Letter of demands is not emailed to all the tenants. Just touched on that. And please go have a look at it. It is so vital. So I think this is an instance where I want to explain this very nice story. We had a lease agreement. There was 2 parties in the lease. Well, two people in the lease agreement. And they were not married. So 2 people staying together in the property. And the one person, as it normally goes, is the nominated representative, sort of. So all the emails go to that person, everything. And what has happened is the letter of demand was sent to party A. Then the next moment, they didn't pay, a lot of things was happening, and then the lease agreement was cancelled with party number A. And everybody was happy because, I mean, clearly they've been always speaking to this person. They will tell everyone, and that person plus everybody who reside through and under them must be evicted. Whole eviction process started. And this is not an Expello matter. I just want to add this quickly. But then what happened is when they got to court, they realized, but the other tenant, although he's on the lease agreement, but it was never emailed to him. So technically, the lease agreement was never cancelled with that tenant. So the court granted the eviction order against tenant A. That person then said, okay, well, I'm not going to vacate because I'm now residing through and under tenant B. And tenant B still has a valid lease agreement. Imagine that poor owner having to go through this whole eviction process, paying all that cost to that attorney, and now they had to restart the whole process with tenant B. That will be devastating. And then one has to also consider, they're going to go back and say, okay, who sent the letter of demand? Oh, I was paying my property practitioner a monthly maintenance fee, and they are professionals and they know the process and they should have done this process. So were they negligent? Oh, Agent, you did not do what you were supposed to do. And therefore, I'm going to hold you liable for the damages that I suffered. I'm quite sure everybody will get a heart attack if that happens. Okay. So please make sure that happens. The next common mistake we see, as I said, people email to the lease agreement, but there's no email address. The other thing that I often see is, remember, in your lease agreement, it stipulates that should you want to amend any terms of the lease agreement, then it has to be done in writing. But what happens in real life? You send an email to your tenant at Gmail, and one day he starts replying from his work email address, tenant@work.co.za. Now you start emailing to the work email. Then what happens at a stage is you send a letter of demand, it gets cancelled. This is one of the things that we always check. That letter of demand is going to give you problems because you'll have to redo it because your lease agreement stipulates specifically which email address should be used. So except if your tenant sends an email stating, I hereby give written notice that I hereby change my email address from this to the address where I prefer to receive communication, it will be better to just add that email address. So please send the documents to the email address in the Gmail and the work, both email addresses. Not going to harm anyone. And you are covered. So you're covered legally because you have forwarded it to the email address stipulated in the lease agreement. And you are covered because you are trying to resolve the problem. So you send it to a person and you know he will receive it. Because again, it's not just following the process, you want to communicate with that tenant. So keep both email addresses. I also want to take the opportunity and ask, please update it with Expelo as well. If you send through the letter of demand and there's additional contact information, please share that with us. If you don't have access to our portal to quickly go update that, or just, you'll see there's a block that says general note, add there. Tenant has this additional number where I sometimes get hold of them, or this is the additional email address that we sometimes use. This will help us to communicate with us because part of our breach process, the most vital part is to actually be able to talk to someone or communicate with someone and get a response. So please share those details. The quicker we have it, the better it is. Then the third one, a company. Now we all know it's very easy to go and establish a company. I think these days, I know there was even a company in Pretoria, you pay 750 Rand and you can go buy a shelf company. But to get a company, it takes you 10 minutes and you are a CEO or a director of a company. A lot of investors also are being advised to create companies. So you separate your personal liabilities from your company liabilities. And this is very valuable because this is how you do business. And one of the reasons you do that is if something goes wrong, at least your private stuff, your family is protected. Okay, so it makes sense. Please don't think that everybody that does it this way is devious. Not at all. This is a business practice and they are being clever by doing it this way. That's the first thing. Now, we always see a lot of companies with one director. Then that one director is the representative and is most probably also going to stay in the property. Now, this is where I almost want to go and say, if you have a company, you're the only director, I almost think you must be the tenant on the lease agreement as well. Nee? Because we want to also protect future tenants or landlords out there that if this company, technically the director doing it through his company, default that they are protected. Because otherwise you can have a person just going creating new companies. He enters into a lease agreement, everything looks good. In the meantime, he's a serial defaulter. So it's also protecting. Don't tell that to the tenant though. So that is one of the values why I usually say add it to the lease agreement as an extra tenant. Remember, yes, I hear about surety. Surety focus really on the Lisa, I see, Jock, you've asked the question. I see the point, email to the director, but not to the company is a common mistake. The company has signed surety documents. Okay, so surety is really focused on the money aspect. So how your surety documents usually mean is if the company doesn't make payment, then you can hold the directors personally liable to make the payment of that money. I just want to say, Jog, so as the surety is focused on our financials, I always also like to add the director for the body corporate rules again, because you want to say, you can't phone a company and say, hello, company, you have made too much noise. No, the person made too much noise. So, Mr. Director, remember, you made a lot of noise, and that's also going to have an impact on your future applications. So, that's with regards to the surety. Yes, for financial reasons. But also your surety doesn't get all of the correspondence in the beginning. So depending on how your surety looks like, you must probably have to get against the company first before you can go after your surety parties. Okay. And I think that was always, people thought, okay, that's like the easy option, just the surety for the financial things. I think to make it easier, just add them as a tenant. Now, that's with one director. The common mistake that we also see is people, you communicate with this one director the whole time, and sometimes we sort of forget that there's actually a company. So instead of saying to company tenant, dear Mr. Director, and the email address, we start somewhere going, dear director, you have to pay the rent. No, we cannot demand even payment from the director. We're demanding it from the company, and we're asking for the director purely as the representative to make the payment. So that's the big difference. Never get confused. It's really like two different parties. The director is only a representative of the company. Who are we going to evict? The actual occupants. We can never evict a company. A company is not a person that physically occupies. If it's a commercial property, that's very nice, because then they're actually doing business from the property. And then you're going to deal with it that way. But with residential, you have to actually physical remove the occupants. The other thing I want to say is the moment you have more than one director, please make sure you have a resolution in place, because we have had instances that when we start with the process demanding the payment, remember the breach process, then the one director said, yeah, but I never agreed that this lease agreement can be entered into, or this person doesn't have the authority. Yeah, but the lease agreement or the application form says he does have the authority. Okay, property practitioner, part of your due diligence is to get all the documents. Do you have a resolution confirming that this person has the authority to act on behalf of the company? So it must be signed by both directors. That is something I know we often overlook, but it is vital. So please make sure that we go through the whole process and we get that resolution. Even if there's more than one director, then it's even becoming more vital, because we never want somebody to turn around and go, no. We never authorized anyone. And it does look a bit suspicious if there's two directors and you get a resolution signed only by the director that's gonna occupy the property. Then I would also go, but why is your co-director not signing anything? I also just want to mention, and this is something that made me think, if I'm confident that my company will be able to pay something, I would gladly sign surety or be added as a tenant. But if I'm a bit worried or things isn't totally as rosy, or we can foresee that there's going to be cash flow problems, maybe I will be a bit more reluctant. So keep that in mind. I'm going to quickly look at some of the questions, because there's amazing questions that's coming through. I went up to 4. What if a company rents for an employer? Do you add the employer to the contract as well? So, Charmaine, Dikil, a very, very good question. I almost want to say it all depends. This is now hard industry. So in the one instance, if they know you have instances where they lease it for a specific employee. and that employee is going to be the same employee for the duration of the lease, I would definitely add them. Because we have had instances where the company doesn't make payment of the rent. We almost want to evict, and then suddenly we speak to the occupant, the employee, and they didn't even know the company wasn't paying. And if we actually just spoke to them, they could have either made the payment or they could have put pressure on the company. So I almost want to say, to protect the employee as well, let them be part of the communications, that they can see, and of course that they can get a copy of the body corporate rules to ensure that they keep to it. So that is one of the things that I want to look at. If you have, we also see instances where a company will lease a property, a residential property, but it's contractors. So it's cheaper for them to lease a property for 12 months, but the occupant is not going to be the same the whole time. Every time they send new contractors to the property, then it won't make sense, because you don't have a specific person that will be at the property. So if you're not sure who's going to property, then you just keep to the company. But if it's going to be a specific person, I would suggest maybe to add them for that purposes. Anything to consider if husband and wife own the company and are directors. Oh, please let them sign the resolution. Because you know what is bad is if they get divorced. Then things can go really skew. And who's in the middle? We often see poor agents being in the middle of this divorce dispute. And then suddenly remember they did everything together. They know everything about each other's lives. Now they're getting divorced. Now they didn't know anything. I didn't know this person. I never agreed to this. We even had an instance where the lease agreement went for 12 months. There was supposed to be an increase. There was a discussion with the I can't remember which party, but they were sort of the representative of both the two parties to go, it's a good tenant. If the market doesn't really allow for it, so we're not going to increase the rent. 3 months thereafter, the parties are getting divorced. Now suddenly the other parties come and said, I never agreed to a renewal. I never agreed to a reduced rental. And the problem was we didn't have anything proper to show that this are acting on behalf of both, and that the communication wasn't sent to both. So especially if they're husband and wife, sign the resolution, make sure the risk is almost more. Okay. Are resolutions also mandatory if there's only one director for a company? Jock, no, because in terms of the Company Act, and I know Jason is on here, and if he wants to jump in, but it's not, if it's one director, the purpose of what I'm discussing is just to cover yourself that both parties have the authority. If it's only one director on the company and you're entering in it, I won't be too hard on the resolution, but I would suggest every time you do a renewal or you do anything to that effect, please check in and make sure if they're still the only director. Okay. So for company purposes, they're supposed to keep resolutions on everything. If they ever I don't know if companies get audited, not that I know of, but your house has to be in order to keep records. Ne? Then you do resolutions to say, thank you, Jason, you're a darling. Your house has to be in order. You have to keep records of all of this, but for your purposes, at least you are covered. Okay. So that's with regards to directors. And please don't stay away from companies. I think but I also think we should move away that it gives a false sense of security. Just because you have a company these days doesn't mean there's extra security or extra funds or anything. They can still disappear. I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. And of course, then the wrong amount of days in the letter of demand. I just want to say, people, if we could start with an eviction sometimes after 7 days, we would gladly do this. If we can speed up the process and get rid of terrible tenants quicker, we will do it. And we will always investigate as much as possible how we can always smooth the process and make things faster. But we cannot change the law. Okay. So even though if we want to change this, my favorite example is, if you get married and you sign an anti-nuptial contract, some parties, they put some extra things in there. It's not like America, but we can have extra things. But if you put in your anti-nuptial contract, if my mother-in-law ever comes and irritates me, I'm allowed to shoot her. And your wife goes, or your husband goes, Perfect, then let's sign. And you go shooter, you are going to jail because that can never make it right. Okay, so you can never put something in a contract that goes over the rules that is set out. So that is something super important. Is there any other questions? Okay. This is such an important topic, and I wanted to go about these things that I think sometimes we forget. On a sip on that. Now, if a lease agreement is defective, we cannot proceed with the cancellation. And that's one of the values and why we are there and why it's so important. The letter of demands we get on time, I know we irritate you sometimes. When I say we, my team, myself, when we go, please redo the letter of demand. And the reason is because we know what the courts want. And if the court is not going to go, oh, shame, poor landlord, you're not getting money, I'm going to oversee this technical thing. No. If it's not done right, you can't cancel the lease agreement and you have to redo the whole process. And I can promise you, if you think 20 days is long now, do you know how long is 20 days if you have to do it for a second time? Very, very long. That's the first thing. Okay, so that's super important. From when do we start counting the number of days? From the date of sent or after 7 days expired? Okay, so the golden rule is usually first day out, last day in. Okay, so I usually say if you send it today, start counting as from tomorrow, and then your 20th day, you can cancel on day 21. Okay, even on the 7 days, if you send it today, you start counting your 7 days tomorrow, and you only cancel on the 8th day. Because remember, you're giving them 7 or 20 days. They have technically up until 1 minute before 12 that day to make the payment, and they're not in breach. It's not limited to office hours. So you have to give them clean days. Also, what is amazing is that's why we know that cancellation can be so technical that for our clients, we will always do it and you never have to worry. But almost before we get to cancellation is the important part of how we do it from the very beginning. So what is the effect of a letter of demand, the consequences of cancellation? And I think I want to share this because I know in the old days we had this thing of, oh, you cancel and then they pay, we continue with the lease and we cancel and they pay, and it goes with that. The first thing that we have to keep in mind is the moment you cancel your lease agreement, you can no longer invoice for rent. Okay, this is super important. The reason being is because the lease agreement has been cancelled. You have no right to stay there. Doesn't mean they're now staying free. No, your landlord is suffering damages. And that's a damages calculation that works differently than invoices. So what I usually ask and what the Expello team is asking you if Expello matters, because I ask that you, on your system, you go and you stop invoicing totally. Because we don't want the invoices to start running and then they think it was a lease agreement. I know, and please bear with me with this one that I say, I know you can charge for damages holdover and all of those type of things. But most of your accounting systems are set up to charge in advance. You can't charge in advance for damages. You have to suffer it first, then you can claim it. And a lot of the systems do not make provision for charging in arrears. That's one of the things that is super important. Okay. Then the second thing is that we have to keep in mind that, and attorneys can do the calculation. So how they would calculate the damages, they'll take the rent times 12, divide by 365, and they will say the daily damages being suffered is X amount of money. So you don't have to do that calculation. And if it goes by the time that they want to issue a summons or anything, they will then ask you for an updated statement. But to be safe, just to stop invoicing for it. Evictions, ideally, you want to start with your eviction within 6 months. I know this might be changed, and I also just want to say this sometimes. We have to remember, and we all see it, a landlord might be patient for 1 month, and they might be patient for 2 months. But then they become impatient. And the problem is an eviction doesn't take a month, doesn't take a week. An eviction takes some time. So we have to make sure that we start the process as quickly as possible, that we can lessen the amount of money lost. Because all money cannot always be recuperated, even if you get judgment. Some people just don't have the money. Okay, so keep that in mind. Then also, cancellation doesn't mean you can now move into the property or just take it back because you're the owner. No. Remember, you gave possession away, and the reason for the eviction is to get possession back. So owners can't force their way in. And usually, by the time it's escalated in eviction, sometimes it becomes very difficult to get access to a property. So that's why we always try to mediate in a respectful manner to get the best results and to get access to a property, because we want to start advertising. We want to go check and make everything as good. And then, of course, the last thing that I always want to mention is please go look at your mandate. If your lease agreement was cancelled, most probably your mandate came to an end. And who of us wants to work for free? Nobody. So if your mandate has, if you cancelled the lease and you are still sending invoices and you are still following up and everything, you are doing this because of charity. You are not going to get paid for it. Luckily, with Expello, we take that burden away. If it's not with Expello, you have to actually reach a point and go, it's now been cancelled. Please go to an attorney and they have to take the process. There's nothing more I can do. Okay, so those are vital things. Let's look, there's amazing questions coming through and I can't believe the hour is almost done. So let's run through the questions. When do we start counting the number of days? Okay, we've addressed that, Charmaine. The 20 days, when do you start counting? Same thing. When do you start counting the 20 business days? From the date of the first letter of 7 days? Ah, okay. So, Charmaine, and please send me a thumbs up if I'm getting your question correctly. A lot of people send a 7-day letter of demand and then they send a 20-day letter of demand. I know the reason for the 7-day is because in practice they think it will put more pressure on the tenants and then they will quickly make payment. I also know there's letter of demands that make provision for 7 days and 20 days. Just to quickly explain the difference. Your mini lease agreement says that if you do not make payment within 7 days, then you can issue summons. Okay, so you can sue them, but you can't cancel the lease and you can't evict them. And what will happen most probably in that instance is every month you'll have to issue a new summons, which is not cost effective for most residential owners. If you send a letter of demand saying 7 days and 20 days, then you start counting from the date that letter of demand has been sent. So I would, Charmaine, and you're welcome to contact us afterwards. But my suggestion is rather send just one letter of demand, making provision for the 7 and 20 days or the 20 days. Otherwise, if you do one letter of demand for 7 days and you send a new 20-day letter, you have to start counting from when the 20-day letter has been sent. Okay, because that's when the actual 20 days is starting to run. And I have to say, this is when I was still appearing in court. This is one of the matters the judge said something and it really stood by me and I really got this. Is because we had a matter where the letter of demand, that was ages ago, the letter of demand was sent, but then the tenant was allowed, so they demanded 7 days, but they granted him 20 days to remedy. And the argument at that stage was, but he was given 20 days, but the letter of demand said 7 days. And the judge, I feel, had the correct opinion to say, but remember, your demand only asked for 7 days. The fact that you gave him extra time, don't make as if it's planned. It is convenient. It could have been extra time, but in the tenant's mind, the time has lapsed. So you can't just because you didn't act in time now go, yeah, but I intentionally gave them extra time. So that's something to keep in mind. But also, the good news is Expello is there to take away these technical things, but don't make it too technical. And if it needs be, please rather speak to us and we can refer you to an attorney that can help you to make sure everything is clear. Apologies, I'm not clear if more than one director resolution in place. Do the other director get included under the tenant as well? So I'm not sure where the resolution and the tenant comes in place. So the reason for the resolution is as proof that all the directors authorize the entering of the lease agreement. So if it's one director with one company, one director, a resolution isn't necessary to confirm that he has the authority, because clearly he has. It's only when there's more than one director to confirm and protect you. Then secondly, as a tenant, I would say, especially if it's a director and a tenant, to put both as tenants. So that's separate from the resolution. If it's still not clear, you're welcome to email me, elise@expelo.co.za, and we can take the discussion a bit further. If a tenant refuses to pay rent, the law stated the tenant can't be evicted anymore, only by court. Elise, because I take note of your comment. I just want to say, in terms of the PI Act, it's only the courts has always had the authority to grant an eviction order, and that's not going to change ever. It's only the magistrates courts and the high courts that grant an eviction order. So that is for any breach, right? Where it's non-payment of rent, refusal to vacate after the cancellation of the lease, anything. So it's not just for non-payment of rent. Rent is due on the 1st of each month, as per the lease agreement. If not received by the 2nd, can we send out letter of demands immediately? Lindsay, yes. So technically, the money, depending on what your lease agreement says. If your lease agreement says the money should reflect on the 1st, then you can send out the letter of demand by the 2nd. If your lease agreement said it has to be paid by the 1st, I would be a bit reluctant, because maybe it reflects only on the 2nd or the 3rd. Also, considering your business stances and you want to keep the communication, I would suggest, and I've seen this from very successful property practitioners, usually on the 2nd, they send out a reminder. Hi, if we haven't received your rent, please make a payment. And I know most systems has got these set up as templates. So send out the reminder. Ideally, I think on the 5th day, then send out your letter of demand, because then you gave time. Because I also tell you, you get very aggressive, upset tenants if you send out a letter of demand and they actually did make the payment. So just make sure. So it must reflect on the 1st. You can do it on the 2nd. I would send a reminder on the 2nd and maybe on the 3rd. This is my opinion, and I would love, because I've got a lot of very experienced agents on today. On their reaction, can I please get a thumbs up if you agree to that, or a thumbs down if you go, no, Elise, you're getting soft now. Please, the letter of demand must go out on the 2nd. That works for our business. Or if you go, yes, send them a reminder because you want to keep the relationship. Oh, you see, thank you. I'm not going crazy. Thank you for the feedback. I love it. So that is working. And also, as I said, the tenant is also, you want to keep that relationship. Irene is saying, hi, going back to occupiers on the lease, must we have copies of all the kids' birth certificates or IDs? Must we collect email addresses of adult kids still living at home? Will only a date of birth be fine for kids? Okay. So, Irene, I think I'm going to go back to one step, is your occupiers. Why was that clause put in? And the lucky part is I was still part of the law firm that put that in. And the reason we set out who the occupiers are was, when you do an eviction, you have to tell the court how many people are occupying the property. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what we realized as time has gone through, you think you're entering a lease with this person, so you want to know who's going to stay in the property, because it also gives you an idea what the property is going to be used for. So the purpose of the occupiers is to say, okay, who's going to stay with you? If it is a mother, father, and children, I would say if you put their names in and the birth date of birth, that is sufficient. I don't think you actually need the birth certificates, depending on how deep you will want to go in there. I know some complexes need these things if they want access. So maybe it's teenager kids and they go in and out at all times and they need specific clearance and access. Then you might need their ID documents or their birth certificates. But at the end of the day, you just want to know who's the occupants. So firstly, to prevent them to let more people occupy the property, firstly. And secondly, when we proceed with an eviction, we want to tell the court, listen, these are it's occupied by two minor children, and maybe they're still very small. They're not going to be affected by exams. Or listen, this is a grade 12 child. We know this is the exams. This is going to impact the house. That's going to influence the eviction order. Okay, so look at that business aspect. What is the purpose why you're getting it? And then from there on, get the information. What if expeller is included in their contract and the tenant decides to take it up with the rental tribunal to try to avoid eviction? Well, will the process be impacted? Jade, so the nice part, okay, let me just clarify. Are you asking the aspect with expeller that the tenant takes up, or is it purely the dispute that the tenant takes to the tribunal? With regard to the second aspect, we often see this. Tenant now starts fighting it. We send out our cancellation letter. Now suddenly we get a letter from the tribunal saying, the tenant has reported, they usually say unlawful evictions or unfair charges or whatever reason, but it's usually unlawful eviction. We often send documents to the tribunal to say, here's the rental statement, here's the letter of demand, here's the cancellation letter. All the boxes has been ticked, and we accordingly we're entitled to proceed with an eviction, and we are in the process in the court. The moment the tribunal then hear it's busy in the court, then they will back off, because firstly they don't want to do the work, and secondly the court has got more jurisdiction. If, however, it's a dispute, a maintenance dispute or anything, before we even could cancel it, then that dispute has to be dealt with before we can evict. So that's why we want to know about these things, and that's why we actually, Expeller team, ask all of our clients, the moment it's handed over to us, please step back. We will tell you when we need you to help us with something, because we will maybe need you to go to the property, to go have a look what's going on, or maybe just to see if you have a good relationship with the tenant, to phone the tenant and tell them to please take our calls. But overall, we don't want you now to get involved, because that's when things go skew. Jade, we even had this amazing thing as we were driving and we got involved in a tribunal matter. And the moment when the tribunal, the presiding officer heard who we are, and we addressed exactly what they wanted. So no emotions, no just away, go to the core. We were able to resolve it very quickly. So that's one of the benefits that we definitely offer. Okay. I also have amazing good news from the Expeller side with regards to letter of demands. And what we've seen is so many clients of ours came and said, "Joe, but Elise, Armand, we need an Expeller letter of demand, because now we send a letter of demand, then we send it to you, you guys get involved. We would prefer that you guys are just involved from the very beginning." So we are launching an Expeller letter of demand for 95 Rand. And how it will work is our system, I'm so excited, it's almost finished. It's going to go live as from most probably next month, that you can go onto our portal and you can purely put in the amount and it will go up, and we can generate the letter of demands. The letter of demand will be generated. We have already done the checklist, and it will be emailed to yourself, the tenant, the owner, and we will have a copy. Also, what is nice is why I love the idea of the Expeller letter of demand is because it's our clients, because then we don't have to explain the difference in between parties. They know exactly it's Expeller that's involved, it's the agency that's involved, and the owner. We don't have a random third party, because people don't always understand it. I'm quite sure TPN gets a lot of calls. These institutes get a lot of calls. It's purely just to smooth the process. Okay, so please contact me if you want more information. We are working with we were having a couple of discussions to see how we can make the process easier, and it's just going to run nice and smooth, and the letter of demand is done correctly. So that is absolutely amazing. Now, I know we are almost running out of time, but I have a director associate, Jason, online from VDM Attorneys, and he's got so much knowledge and experience. Jason, if you can put on your camera and your and unmute, we can unmute you. There we go. Good morning, Jason, and welcome.
Good morning, Elise. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you guys.
So sorry to bring you in so long, but I mean, I get so excited and I realize we run for a very long time. Jason, you see most probably a lot of things, and that's why, because of everything you are seeing, we are having the event at your offices next week, Tuesday, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So we are so looking forward to it. And I think just for everyone's interest, what Elise is talking about and what Expello stands for is absolutely paramount to the difference between a successful eviction or an unsuccessful and costly eviction. And everything that you've spoken about is, in my mind, the difference. And I think to end, I would just like to say this is that failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So by not doing letters of demand correctly, by not doing cancellation letters correctly, you are preparing to fail. And we see that in the courts. You can have on paper a brilliant eviction application and all the merits can be on your side, but you can fail simply because your demand wasn't correct, your cancellation wasn't correct. So I'm super excited about your new Expello letter of demand. It makes our lives as attorneys a lot easier when we know for certain that this is an Expello matter. I know for certain the demand was done correctly, the cancellation was done correctly, and it really is smooth sailing from there. So yeah, next week's going to be a great time. It's really going to be beneficial to everyone in attendance. And I think also we need to remember that you as agents as well, you're imperative to this process, and the more knowledge and the more power that you have, the more beneficial you're going to be to your landlords and obviously to your tenants as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for your knowledge. You guys have to see him in person. Like I said there, I've put it on the share the screen. Please email events@VDM Law. If you miss it suddenly or you forget, please email me. I'll put you in contact with them. There is limited seats, so please don't leave it out. Don't miss out on this opportunity. I'm so sorry for all the people in other provinces like Ian. I have to pick on you because you usually pick on me. Ian, I know you guys are not here, but it's going to be absolutely amazing. So don't miss out and come and meet myself. I will be there, and Johan and will be there as well. So please join us. Jason, thank you very much for your time. Please go work on our evictions
Thank you.
further. And looking forward to see
Absolutely.
you next week.
Likewise. Thanks very much, Elise.
And then to just end off the session, while I'm jumping there, important email addresses. Are we sharing this? Oops, the next webinar is not on the 15th of July. That is today. It's on the 19th of August. Please join us then again. We look forward to see you all, and please communicate with us. Do things right. Cover yourself, cover your landlord, and don't cave into the pressures. Look after yourselves. Thank you.